Hi, everybody, and welcome. We have Kimberly Parsons. She's a naturopath, hormonal specialist, herbalist, author, and chef with extensive experience in holistic wellness. And her passion lies in blending evidence-based herbal medicine, expert hormonal insights, tailored nutrition, strategic fasting for women, and personalized cleanses. And she really guides women to achieve hormonal balance and vibrant health naturally. She's the founder of Naturopathy and is on a mission to support women with natural hormone care and empowering women's health and well-being. Thank you so much, Kim, for all of the work that you do and are doing within the world, particularly for women's health. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Nat.
So I would love to dive in. I mean, I'm also a naturopath, and I think in the UK, particularly the work we're doing, it's not a very common profession, particularly where in holistic health, how it is evidence-based in nutrition, herbal medicine, functional medicine aspects, and lifestyle causes. So I wonder, how did you become a naturopath, and why are you focusing your life's work on women's health?
I knew I wanted to be a naturopath when I was really young. I grew up in an environment where we lived by the seasons. My mum is Italian, and so my grandmother and my nonno on my Italian side would grow their own vegetables. And I noticed my nonna would hit her knuckles with stinging nettles, and food was medicine. And the herbs that grew in our environment came into our home and they were used. So for us, for me and my family, it was just normal. And then when I was about 15 or 16, I started to skip periods and my cycle started to become irregular. And my mum took me to a GP and she took me to a naturopath, and I had the experience of being able to see the results of both of those treatment protocols. And I naturally just vibed with the naturopath. She took more of a holistic view of me, and I felt like she really understood me. And not that the GP was not great, because I do think he was a great family doctor, but there was something about the relationship I formed with a naturopath that made me feel really held. I felt safe, and my healing journey was completely different with her. And I'm just a very nurturing kind of personality. So when it came to choose what profession I would like to follow, I felt like healthcare was always going to be, I wanted to be either an osteopath or some sort of health professional. And, you know, when I came to choosing university courses, I'm like the person that likes to take the path less trodden. The reason why naturopathy wasn't something that 18-year-olds straight out of school were going into, but I wanted to. For me, it was exciting, it was new, and it just felt really right for me and who I was. And I was so curious about the body and how it functions in the world and how it interacts with its environment, and what food and herbs and nutrition all can do to play a part in wellness and health. I was just insatiable in those years, in my late teens, early 20s, and university for me, 4 years of a naturopathy degree in Melbourne. I think back now, and they're still some of the best years. I just remember sitting in those lecture rooms, just being this sponge who couldn't stop writing. But I was the only one straight out of school in there. So my university years were surrounded by women in their 30s and 40s. There were only 5 men in my 50-person cohort. So these were women who had had careers in different professions and had come at naturopathy as a second career choice. So I was around very mature adults, all with different aspects of life going on. And it was really lucky for me, because I felt like I came in with this curiosity, but also then was surrounded by people with all of this life experience. And that has really helped me become the naturopath that I am now, I think, because I wasn't just seeing life from the lens of a 19-year-old. I was seeing life with all of my friends at university from the lens of mothers and grandmothers and career women. And so, yeah, when it came to sitting in the lecture rooms and just discussing all aspects of health. I just was really lucky, I think, and I've loved being a naturopath ever since.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I studied naturopathy. I think I had a midlife crisis being in the UK for like 7 years. So I thought I'm going to go back to basics. I ended up back in Australia and doing the degree that I always wanted to do was naturopathy in Australia. And it's so interesting, as you say, how there are so many different people in the room, aren't there? Grandmothers, women who have come from being burnt out. And then particularly, I suppose, when you studied naturopathy 20 years ago, that was a very different landscape and lens because we didn't really have the evidence that we do now. So it's really changed. And I think we really now know the benefits, or how all of these seasonal living, all of these things that your nonna did, there is so much evidence for it now, and more so than we knew anecdotally.
Absolutely. I think my knowledge was centered a lot around traditional methods, like we were going back into books that were written in the 1600s and druids. That was herbal medicine to me is my favorite modality. It's my passion. But we were reading books written by Culpeper. So now it's just amazing to see how much research we have. And yeah, it's really opened up our field. Moving to the UK did feel like I did take about a 10 to 15 year leap back in terms of how people understand naturopathy here in the UK. It's just quite different to Australia. So it's been a bit of an education. A lot of my work around being a naturopath here is about educating people about what we can treat and what we do. But I did take a bit of a 10-year career tangent because I got into food. And so naturopathy got parked for about 10 years. And I think that there was part of that parking was because I was frustrated that I wasn't seeing as many patients that I wanted to here in the UK because there just wasn't that awareness. So I was like, okay. And all of these other opportunities came forward for me. And I was lucky that a career as a chef unfolded for me over the span of about 10 years. And now, having come back after motherhood, taking a career break through those mothering years, now that I'm back in practice again, I've got this 10 years of food knowledge and chefing experience that I didn't have when I was in a naturopath originally. So now I feel like this really well-rounded practitioner who can really span both fields in terms of being able to help people in the kitchen and understand what they can eat for their health, and take all of that original naturopathy knowledge now into my practice as well. So yeah, I feel quite lucky that my career has taken the path that it has.
I think it's really interesting because that speaks about, food really is medicine, and we really do know food is medicine, but what we can see in the landscape of social media or what people are wanting in the natural health world, they know that, medications aren't supporting their health, they're dampening in them, creating more symptoms, but it is going into green pharmacy. Or I know we're constantly asked, what can I do for this symptom? What can I take for this symptom? And it is still, we live in a modern world, we want quick fixes. But what really moves the needle is how food is biochemical information, and it can switch on and switch off diseases. So I guess that really leads to, now you've created naturally the 20-day app. We know 28-day app. And so why is this approach needed right now?
Oh, that's such a good question. That I think, the way we consume information has changed. Just even this format here where we are today in podcast, this wasn't around 20 years ago. So now women and just the population in general are able to take bite-sized pieces of information in their daily life. You can be driving in the car and learning. You can be on the commute to work and be listening to podcasts like this, learning from people who previously were probably in practice, in lecture theatres, and not able to just put their content across to people. Now we have social media and carousels give us all of these bite-sized pieces of content and information that is so useful. So I think we haven't really been talking about hormones or health prior to this moment in time where we are in modern life, where there's just so much content, so much information available. So it's so accessible now, which is great. But I also think that it's more needed now than ever, that we're seeing health outcomes that are not favorable for our human evolution. For the first time in a long time, it feels like we've reached a point where humans are not evolving, they're de-evolving. So for me, it's so important that people educate themselves. I do believe that there's a huge gap. I mean, if we're talking specifically in women's health, I do believe women are not offered the education about their hormones that they deserve, about their human cyclical rhythm. I think the sex ed classes that we do receive at school are severely lacking, if we're really honest, for women. And to be fair, maybe a 16-year-old isn't necessarily that interested in what's going to be happening to her in her 30s and 40s and 50s in her menopause. But maybe if I took myself back to those sex ed classes, I probably would have just thought, oh yeah, I don't need to know that now, work that out later. But at the same time, she did deserve to know that she has these beautiful hormones that are like her superpowers. And she did deserve to know that her cycle was something that she could use to her benefit and not see as an inconvenience. I think there's so much emphasis put on the cycle arriving. Okay, now what do you do with it? How do you deal with your cycle, your period? And girls, I think I've seen in my practice, certainly, more and more women are being offered, or girls are being offered, the contraceptive pill because they're having these symptoms that are not enjoyable, and it's seen as the fix-all for every hormone symptom that you may experience when your cycle is still establishing, it's still maturing, it needs to happen where it needs to really become a robust, beautiful cycle that becomes established. And too often we're just quietening it down, saying, no, it's okay, I don't need to have a baby now, I don't need my cycle now, I'll wait till later in life. So I'm seeing in practice, and I get the opportunity to meet with lots of girls in their early 20s. I had this opportunity in May, and I sat with these women and said, how many of you are on the pill or using some sort of contraceptive? How many of you actually get a period? And there was a group of 25 of them, and only 2 of them had cycles. And they were all around 20, 21, 22. There was one 24-year-old, and she was not on the pill because she'd come off it and then realized she had PCOS, and she was trying to treat her hormones naturally. And I found myself thinking, wow, this is just a snapshot of women in the UK, London-based girls, but only 2 of those girls are having a monthly period. And then I asked them, how many of you under the care of a GP who's helping you navigate your cycles? Like, are you just thinking that you're going to stay on the pill for, years on end? Is the GP saying that you should take a break from your cycle? And there was, in general, these women are just thinking that they're going to stay on the pill until they're ready to have a baby. That, to me, is quite a scary picture. So why now is we need so much of this information.
You have a couple of quotes on your website, which I think I feel them so much. It's that you say, I want all women to realize their power as a woman who can create life and harness these incredible hormones that men don't have. And that's absolutely not to put men down, but it's to enable women to reach their own potential and create equality so every person can thrive.
Absolutely.
I think that sums it. And it's so interesting, going back to education of our menstrual cycle is we've for so long been taught that it's just to procreate, but your period is a vital sign. And I think we don't have that education in the NHS system, or we don't have that education in the doctor's office. And and also, I know for myself, my first period story, I hid my period from my mother for 7 months from shame.
Wow.
And that story isn't uncommon. And for you to say today in 2025, women in their early 20s and 2 of them are cycling, we think we have come so far, but look where we are, right? And so, as you say, we have social media, we have all of this information, but still this core information that your period is not beautiful. Like, it's still shame taking your pads or your tampons to the toilet in an office, when this is not okay. Thank you so much for highlighting this. We need to scream at the rooftops. And also going back to what you mentioned about the importance of going to a naturopath, a nutritionist, or a herbalist. I think it's that education here where we are in the UK. Going to the doctor, it's free, or seeing a healthcare provider is free. So I think there's that kind of like misinformation of I shouldn't have to pay to see a healthcare provider. But as you said from the beginning, it starts from that therapeutic relationship. It starts from that care of being seen, that your period is beautiful to be seen for it. Wow, that's so interesting. And then I think I read actually recently that we need to start knowing this information, or we need to know our 28-day app. I think in young women athletes, when they were in their luteal phase, their running speed increased by 2 seconds or something, which is pretty humongous, right? And so if we knew this information with young women athletes, instead of hiding it or taking pills, how can we use it to our advantage?
You're completely right, Nat. I really honestly believe that if every woman can advocate for themselves because they have the education that they deserve, then we wouldn't have. I just think it's very easy for girls at the moment to get their period and just put the responsibility on somebody else, because there isn't this landscape of education around a cycle. There isn't a positive narrative around your menstrual cycle. We are supposed to be productive women who are part of this feminist movement that is making sure that we are equal to men, and that means that we have to get on the career path. We have to do all the things that make us seem equal, but we're not. We never have been, never will be. And I think if women were offered an alternative, which was that we are cyclical women with rhythms, and that we don't have to push every single day, then women would feel completely different to the way they are now. And if we could give them the education that they deserve, and if they could really see their cycle in a completely new light, I think that's what every woman deserves. Like, that's just where I sit. I can't express that enough from my heart, in my gut, when I see I've got some really amazing patients who are all around 17 to 21 at the moment. And honestly, what they're going through breaks my heart. It really does. And they're the lucky ones that get to work one-on-one with me. And that's also why I created the app, because not everyone can work one-on-one with people like me. Like you say, healthcare in the UK, it's free. You can walk in and see a GP and get the care that you think you need, but they're not giving you what you actually really need, I don't believe. The app really is about being able to offer women of all ages. I mean, it really is right up into women in their 50s and 60s are using the app. But ultimately, my real passion lies in the early education and making sure that women are able to access this power and have that knowledge throughout their whole life, because there are going to be so many parts of her female journey where she will have to advocate for herself. We all have to at some point, whether that's through your 20s and having terrible PMS or pain or PCOS or endometriosis. She needs to know what she can do to help herself and where to get help from and what is going on. And then when she wants to have a baby, possibly in her 30s, let's say, she needs to know how to prepare her body for conception and all the things that she can do. And she needs to know that she can actually do things. And then as we head into perimenopause, there are things that women can do to prepare themselves, and then what to do in the perimenopause, and understand it so you don't land up feeling like you are the crazed, whingy woman that we are all portrayed as at that stage of life. They're just, like, you know, I'm 40, nearly 42, so I'm a woman who's been through, I've had PCOS in my 20s, I've had miscarriages, I've had pregnancies. I feel like I've navigated some of those journeys, and now I'm in that very early start of my 40s into perimenopause, and I know the landscape. I know what I can advocate for myself. I know what I can do for myself. And I just believe every woman deserves that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's such a confidence and reverence when you can advocate for yourself, because you know your body day in, day out, you know your signals, your clues. But I think we ignore them or avoid them, or we disempower ourselves by handing over control to. And it's interesting too, a lot of things come up by that disassociation with our bodies of looking to our mothers and noticing what they went through. Or I often hear, well, my mother didn't go through this, or she didn't go through that, so I shouldn't, or it wasn't like that then. But I think as you mentioned at the beginning, the world has changed so quickly now. We have access to immeasurable toxins that just have never been tested on the human body, let alone the woman's body was only first recognized in science in the 90s. So, you know, all of these pain remedies, they've not been tested on a woman's body or blood. So this information is so important. So let's get into kind of your method, and I know you speak about hormone, kind of this hormone hierarchy. We know about progesterone, estrogen, but can you talk about like the whole piece or the whole picture that you speak about in your app and women can track?
Yeah, absolutely. So when women come to work with me, they usually have a list of symptoms that they are experiencing. And that's normal. It's not about having no symptoms throughout your whole life. If you have a healthy cycle, there are going to be some things that pop up for you. I always sit women down and help them understand this hormone hierarchy. It's a pyramid, and the hormones at the bottom, your foundational hormones, these are the ones that are the most important to keep aligned and in balance and in check. And then you have to imagine that as you move up this pyramid, there are the least important hormones to your survival as a female human. So at the very top, we actually have our sex hormones. So we have testosterone, we have estrogen, and we have progesterone. Those hormones are only going to be in balance if the rest of our core wellness and health is in check, because our body will prioritize looking after our stress response, our metabolism, over creating a human being, which is what our sex hormones are predominantly there for us as females. So imagine you have the concrete foundations of a house that you're building. They are cortisol and insulin. If you don't have a rock solid foundation for cortisol balance and insulin balance, then everything else in that house that you're building will just sway in the wind, and you'll get all the symptoms that come with having cortisol and insulin in imbalance. So I think that there is a bit of a misconception that you've got to get estrogen and progesterone. They're the ones, that's where you start. But actually, it's the complete opposite. What we don't really realize when we talk about hormones is that hormones are messengers, and they send little messengers all around the body. But I think what's happened is that we've kind of encapsulated parts of our body into little silos instead of as a whole. We see our little messenger hormones sending messages to our gut, to our liver, to our urinary system, our lungs, to our adrenal glands, everything is talking to each other. So there's no real point in just looking at what estrogen and progesterone are doing, because ultimately our metabolism is so intrinsically tied into our endocrine system and our sex hormones that they, for me and for you, and for every naturopath, we see them as completely whole. Like, we can't treat one without treating the other. So when I have a patient, I go deep and, we look at everything that's going on. And so you work out what her detox pathways look like, how she's making hormones, using hormones, and then removing those hormones from her body. I think that we sometimes forget that you have to go through those 3 stages. And then our nervous system is so tied into this, which is why the cortisol is so part of that foundation. So the hierarchy always starts with a discussion around what her insulin is doing and then what her cortisol is doing. Once we establish whether she's insulin resistant, whether she's insulin sensitive, whether it's in check, I can really start to understand how her hormones are playing out in that hierarchy. And then we check in with her cortisol levels and see, is she finding ways to regulate her nervous system? If not, then the next hormone up that hierarchy is oxytocin. And we look at how she can bring in some oxytocin to really help lower that cortisol level. You have to understand that cortisol and melatonin, another hormone that helps promote really beautiful, restful sleep, is a bit higher up the hierarchy, but they are on a seesaw effect. They can't both be high and both be low. When one's high, one's low. When cortisol is high, and at 8 o'clock in the evening, you're still pumping out cortisol, melatonin is tanking. And at 8 p.m. in the evening, that's when our melatonin should be almost reaching its peak. I see so many women with melatonin cortisol imbalance. That means that their sleep isn't going to be optimal. And then we round up with building blocks style of hormones, with DHEA and pregnenolone. These are hormones that are building blocks to create the hormones further up the chart. Then we come to the thyroid and the melatonin, and then we reach at the very tip of the triangle, or the very tip of the house, like your roof of the house. That's when we have our sex hormones. And they, even though they're important, they are the least important that I'm worried about in the very beginning of working with someone. So the hormone hierarchy means that we land up focusing on diet, because there's no better way to balance insulin than starting at the diet, and then cortisol, and that's looking at her life, and that is looking at sleep and the way she can manage. If she's pushing every single day, if she's putting too much on her plate, if she's a person that likes to write to-do lists and check through them all, if she is still pushing through at 11 o'clock at night because there's just not enough hours in the day and she's still going, I mean, it's so common, really common. And we have to find ways of undoing that before we even hit the estrogen and testosterone, progesterone hormones. So it takes time with women. And I think that that's sometimes where it's a little frustrating for women that, yes, we have a 28-day cycle, but if you really want to create change, there's a lot you can do in 28 days for sure. But you've got to start at the very bottom of that hierarchy and let your cycle take some time to find its new rhythm. Once you start working with its natural rhythm, your body will be like, thank you. This is what I've been trying to,
Hello.
Yeah, hello. I've been here this whole time and you seem to be ignoring me. So yeah, it's the hormone hierarchy. I'm really passionate about trying to help women understand the relationship between cortisol and insulin, and then how that impacts on the rest of the hormones.
Yeah, I think we understand stress effects, is the basis for most modern diseases. But as you say, in your 20s, even 30s, like you think you've got plenty of time. But it's not until we think, oh, okay, I want to start getting pregnant right now, or you've been living a life for a certain in this overdrive, and then you start getting more sick than normal, or then you might have an accident. And that is the 3-point turn as to what changes your life, and you don't realize then how far you have to backtrack that you have been living in this overdrive and stress. And I think, you mentioned the lifestyle really affects this. I think, well, at the moment, what I'm seeing, it used to be yoga was more common. It was yoga and HIIT. Now it's kind of Pilates and matcha, and that's the kind of the things that we want to do to support our fitness and lifestyle and things like that. But what are you noticing with women? And also there's fasting. And I know you speak about fasting for women, which I'm very excited to ask you about, because there's the intermittent fasting, particularly women late 30s, 40s. I can't get rid of this bulge. And that's the first thing that we lead to. So it's more stress. So I wonder if
Yeah.
you could speak about those lifestyle practices. If we're looking at that hormone hierarchy, and the cortisol and the insulin are the main drivers, what is a concoction to cause those worst outcomes?
Yeah, so if we go back a little bit to the hormone hierarchy, the thing that I guess I didn't say, and this is leading on to the lifestyle part, is that estrogen really doesn't like insulin, like high insulin. So if we're trying to create a cycle where for the first half of the cycle, your body wants to create a lot of estrogen by your follicle that's developing, that will become the egg that's released, that produces a huge amount of estrogen. So if we are eating a lot of refined carbohydrates, if we're keeping our insulin high during that first part of our phase, it can impact on our ability to create really beautiful, healthy eggs, and therefore how much estrogen is produced. So I teach women how to fast during that phase. And then progesterone on the other side, she really, really doesn't mind a bit of insulin. She can deal with that, but she really doesn't like cortisol. So if you have a mix of high energy workouts in the second half of your phase, then progesterone is going to be like, I don't like this. What's going on? I can't keep this little embryo or this egg safe. I'm not able to build the lining that I need to nurture the little egg that's become available to me to look after and nurture, because progesterone is that nurturing, mothering hormone that wants to just keep everyone safe and protected and nurture and well fed. She wants to put the blanket on the little egg and just nurture it down into the uterine lining and just say, stay there, you're good here. And so when working with women in terms of lifestyle, the fasting becomes a really central part, especially when women start to hit that stage of life where insulin resistance is just normal. Because in our 40s, like late 30s to into your 40s, one of the symptoms of perimenopause is insulin resistance. It's because, and this is part of the education part again, our bodies, our reproductive endocrine system is shifting into a completely new metabolic system. Metabolism in our 20s and 30s is so vastly different to what our metabolism is going to be like in our 40s, 50s, and for the rest of our life. So this transition starts to happen. And that's when women reach out to me and say, like you said, I cannot lose this weight. What I used to do in my 20s and 30s just isn't working anymore. It starts to affect their mental health. They start to lose their confidence right at that stage of life where there's, for me, I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and coming out of, having babies into postpartum, your body has gone through changes. And then you get hit with this sort of insulin resistance, and you're like, oh my God, everything's changed. And I don't know how to go back. I can't get my body back from before. And it's probably never going to happen because that metabolism shift is starting to happen. When your ovaries say, I'm done, I'm retired, I've had a great time, but I'm on strike now, your adrenal glands and lots of different places in your body will pick up the slack for where estrogen is produced. But one of the places is from your fat cells. So your body is naturally making you insulin resistant because insulin is the messenger hormone that says, hey, cell, can you let some glucose in, please? I've got some glucose for you. But when there's too much insulin, your cells start to get really bored of the same message hitting their door. And they're like, no, go away. I'm really sick of you. It's like having too many of those door knockers that come and want to sell you stuff. And you just land up saying, no, no more. I'm not opening the door to anyone. That's like insulin resistance. And so the glucose stays in your blood system, and your body's natural reaction is to go store it somewhere else as a fat cell because it doesn't know what else to do with it. The cells are not taking it up. It can't stay in the blood system. So it goes, okay, well, I'm going to go store it. And it starts to store it in all of the places, such as your thighs, your central area around your, that midriff area, your bingo wings, and all of those beautiful curvy parts of the woman is where you'll start to see these fat deposits. And that's your body's way of starting to prepare for another estrogen production system for when our ovaries, it's like we're starting to renovate your body because it knows that the ovaries at some point are going to say, well, I've had a great time, but now it's really time for me to shut up shop. And so your body's going through a renovation. And that's all I try and explain to women. You're doing nothing wrong. You are not broken. There's nothing that you are doing that is incorrect, or please don't beat yourself up. This is not you eating the wrong foods, or you don't need to work harder in exercise to shift this. You don't need to get up at 5 a.m. and hit the gym and hit this and do that and try and work yourself into the ground because nothing's working. You're trying to do so much more. And I see this sort of desperation in women and this real frustration that starts to then come over them as they have to start buying jeans that are bigger, or their clothes don't fit anymore, and they start to really lose their sense of self. So when you can help a woman understand that this shift is happening because of biology, because of their body trying to protect them for the whole, probably like third of their life, that they will live without their ovaries making their estrogen for them, then it sort of takes on a different, it's like, oh, okay, well, what do I do now? I'm like, great. Okay, now you know, so let's now do some fasting. And so if you can fast in certain ways, it's not intermittent fasting, let's just say that, because I've seen plenty of women who have spent years intermittent fasting, and they have just slowly gotten worse and worse and worse and worse, and they don't understand it. They're like, this works for my husband, and this is what I did in my early 30s, and it always worked for me. So why am I struggling now? And then that's when I can sit with them and say, okay, you have a 28-day cycle, or ish. We work out what their cycle is. And I say, okay, so if you want to balance out your estrogen, we have to balance out your insulin, and vice versa with your progesterone. So let's find ways where we can stretch your metabolism. It's like a muscle. It's like exercise. If you do the same thing every single day, that muscle's going to get used to performing at that level, and you won't ever really get the best results out of it. You have to treat your metabolism like it's a stretchy muscle that needs to be flexed and then relaxed, and then flexed and then relaxed. And so because our cycle is that beautiful rhythm of estrogen rising and then coming down and then rising up a little bit, but then progesterone coming in and rising up even higher, but it's not present in the first half of her cycle, we have this picture as females with our hormones that is very much ebb and flow. It's already stretching and pulling. So when we add in fasting into that stretch and pull picture, then women can start to see that insulin resistance just disappear, and insulin is like really happy, and her cortisol is really happy because she's not doing really long fasts in her routine. She's actually allowing herself to eat the complex carbohydrates, which progesterone goes, oh, thank you so much. You know, this is making me happy. And then we work on her sleep as well and her exercise. And we talk about how the different styles of exercise at different phases of her cycle will work with the hormones that are present at the time. I get really anxious when a woman tells me that she's training for a marathon or something like that, because it will mean that she will probably, even on her period, push through and do all of these long runs. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just trying to help a woman take the pressure off herself when she needs to, which is that time on her period and that time in her week or so before her period starts. There's these 2 weeks where I really have to just hold that woman and say, would it be okay if you just took your foot off the pedal for a while and just did some things that were more restful? Instead of push, 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 could we just tone it down a bit? And instead of you turning up to your Monday morning HIIT class that you do every Monday, could you just only do that for those 2 Mondays of the cycle instead of, it's all very personal to every woman, but once you start to see that fasting and sleep and how she manages her stress and her exercise starts to play a picture of her cycle. And to be honest, I think that the lifestyle is probably the more important aspect of this than what she nourishes her body with. Like, nourishing your body with the right supplements and foods, it's like a cherry on top. But if she can just set her lifestyle up in her calendar so that she's not constantly asking her body to work in the same way all the time and actually learn that ebb and flow and that stretch and pull, then her hormones are always going to thank her for that.
I think the wisdom for our lives, or the remedy for our lives, is just know thyself and work with your biology and everything that you're doing with the app and your wisdom and your advocacy. So I know if somebody can't come to you, this is why you've created the 28-day Naturally app. So just talk us through what happens. I know it's got all of your recipes, your naturopathy recipes, it's your seed cycling, your herbal wisdom, and also education. And education is key. So can you talk us through, and I know you've got a founding members coupon so that all of our listeners can join and dive in.
So it's called Naturally 28 Days. And I wanted to create a tool for women so that if they knew what day of their cycle they are, they would be able to go inside the app and choose. So I'm on day 20 of my cycle today. I know that because, you know, we all have devices that tell us where we are. It's not hard to work out, but I also know my symptoms and my body so well that I kind of always know where I'm at. So, and I hope women can also have that same innate knowledge. Like, you don't need the app to tell you what day the cycle is. But in general, at the starting point of meeting women where they are, if you have your device telling you you're on day 20, you can go inside the app, and what you do is just search for day 20, and then all the recipes for you are listed. So if you're feeling like you need to have some inspiration for breakfast, you go into breakfast, you choose day 20, and there I have listed all the recipes that are great for you to eat for day 20. So day 20 is around the time where progesterone is starting to really, really, really rise, but also estrogen's starting to really come down. So this is where, as a female, you want to be having really stable blood sugar levels and keeping the cortisol really low, right? So, and like I said, progesterone loves some carbohydrates. So this is where you have a bit of complex carbohydrates, So you might have some chickpea curries, or you might have some porridge oats, or you might have, legumes and beans. And you're also trying to make sure that leading up to your week before your cycle, you've got a high dose of magnesium and calcium, which is the two nutrients that's really going to help with those PMS symptoms. And we really want to keep our inflammation low at this phase on a day 20. So you're wanting to make sure you've got lots of healthy fats in there as well. So a bit of salmon or some healthy nuts. So yeah, when you come into the app, you're going to see sections where you've got the recipes, and then you just choose what day you are, and that's how you can see what's best for you on any given day. But there's so much in the app that's about learning from me. So there's a section called 28 Days in Me, where I can go into day 20 today, and you're going to get about a 10-minute recording from me, which is going to tell you everything that you need to know about your lifestyle, your mood, your exercise, your vibe, your hormone levels, everything that's going on for you on day 20. So I really hope that women will just tune in and take the time to learn and enable this knowledge to become part of their norm. There's cleansers in there. So the exact cleansers that I get my one-on-one patients to do. So when I know that they're really struggling with removing the hormones from their body and the detox pathways are a little off, but also their insulin resistance or their insulin blood sugar levels, are just all over the place, then we do the cleanse. And that just gives everyone this clean slate. It's like a reset. And then we get to work on the 28 days method, which is learning what days are, I call them estrogen feeding days, and which days are progesterone fueling days. And so you ebb and flow with estrogen feeding and progesterone fueling, and you try and create the fasting windows that I recommend for you, so that you create this really beautiful rhythm where you're able to eat the right foods, fast the right way, keep your insulin and cortisol levels all in check, and everything just feels calm and in flow. And there's also chat within the app, which I think is a really important aspect for women. When they have community and when they're able to connect with other women, I never like that feeling that any woman does her hormones on her own. Like how tragic is it that you kept your cycle quiet from your mum? And I think that so many of us, even still today, I mean, they're probably even more so today, we don't share our struggles as much as we probably should. And so the chat is there. Not only can you access me and ask me all the questions that you want to ask, there's recipe questions, there's sharing your top tips. There's a whole heap of chats in the app that enable you to kind of just connect and find people who are all in the app doing the same thing. So yeah, there's a lot in the app that I just hope that is a really beautiful tool. But ultimately, you just need to know what day of the month you are, go in, and then there's a bountiful amount of knowledge and tools that means that you know exactly where you are in your cycle, exactly what to eat, what the best foods are for that day, and it just takes all the guesswork out of it.
To have a roadmap, particularly, I mean, I would just join for Kim's recipes. Kim has the most incredible, beautiful recipe books. And again, geeking out from a naturopathic perspective, you have the herbal medicine, which we haven't really got to speak so much because that's a whole episode. Maybe we could do talking about botanicals and herbs and how they can do so much to work with.
Yeah, so I didn't really put any of the herb knowledge into the app because that feels the way I work with herbs and with people, with patients, everyone gets their bespoke herbal formula, taking the time to really understand a case, then I put that together. So you can access me to be able to get those herbs to you once you're inside the app, or even if you're not in the app. But, there are some basics. So if Vitex or Vitex agnus castus is its full name, otherwise known as chaste tree, that's a herb that's really great for that luteal phase. So if your cycle is shortening, because it will in your early 40s, or if you've got really bad PMS, then Vitex is the herb that you should start with. It takes about 3 months of work, so it's not a quick fix. So people should keep that in mind. And then there are loads of other herbs that are either central nervous system focused, gut focused, liver focused, or phytoestrogenic. And they start to play a role in how you look at a women's cycle and how you put that bespoke herbal formula together. Even though they're not in the app, it's mostly food related and lifestyle and fasting. I think that herbs are so powerful and so potent that they really need to be still practitioner based. So that's where, you get to reach out to me and say, okay, I think I need some herbs to really, really kick this into alignment for me.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I should have mentioned that because herbs are pharmacological in action and they have their energetic composition too, and it's based on your constitution. So yeah, but at least we have in there your seed cycling and all of your incredible holistic wisdom. So I guess we're short for time, but is there any last advice or things that women could do like now before downloading the app at least?
Sleep. Sleep is the one thing I start to work with women before we look at their diet and their exercise and anything else. I make sure I get her sleep right. If you always phase one of my treatment plans, because if a woman is not sleeping well, then her cortisol level is always going to be off. And we go back to that hormone hierarchy. If her sleep hasn't worked, her cortisol's off and her insulin's off. Because when we're sleep deprived, our insulin is naturally higher. We crave more carbs. It just throws everything out. And hormones are one of those things that can really disrupt our sleep. So there's so many of my patients that are having night sweats, hot flushes. The sleep is just not like it used to be. So I always focus in on making sure that they're getting really good restorative sleep. So if you're not sleeping well, then start to focus in on how you can create the best sleeping environment for yourself, how you can protect that little capsule of the day around sleep. I always say that how you will feel for tomorrow starts at around 4 p.m. today. You have to start looking at how you prepare for sleep. I don't have my phone anywhere near me from about 8 p.m. onwards. It could be a bit earlier, but realistically, it doesn't enter my bedroom. I charge it here in my office. I try and wind down with coloring. I kind of find ways I go from 100% to, I can't go from 100% to 0%, and no woman really can. So you've got to bridge that gap, and you've got to find ways where you can go from 100% doing to, you can't just fall asleep straight away. The whole, I've spent plenty of late nights building this app until, 11 o'clock at night, and then go straight to bed and wonder why I can't sleep. So you've got to bridge and start to decelerate. I love that concept of starting to allow yourself to decelerate into rest, because it's too hard to go from 100 to 0 and just immediately lie on the sofa with a book and go, oh, look at me resting. This feels great. Like, it just doesn't happen. So if you can protect your sleep at all costs and do the things that enable you to get the best night's sleep possible, and it's not magnesium. I'm really sorry for everyone out there that's like, well, I take my magnesium. I'm like, yeah, great. It's definitely not the panacea that it promises to be, that you'll get, you'll start to relax and have a really great night's sleep. So yeah, most of the time people just need to put their phones away. So I know it sounds like I'm being a mum, but I have grown women who are still not able to put their phones away, and they're wondering why they're not getting better, and they're falling asleep, literally falling asleep on the sofa with their phone in their hands, and that's how they fall asleep, and have fallen asleep for years. And then they're sort of like, well, Kim, I can't see any change. And it's like, no, because you're not protecting your sleep. You're not doing the things. It's so foundational. So if there's just one thing that everyone leaves with here today, it's for me to know that they are not broken. There is no woman out there that is broken that needs fixing. You are perfectly formed in every single way. but there is a beautiful rhythm that you can tap into that you deserve to tap into and that your body will love you for. And the relationship you have with your cycle will be one of the most beautiful relationships you could ever have with anything. I kind of miss my cycle from my 20s and 30s because I love my cycle. And now where it is in my 40s, I'm like, oh, this, I could start to feel it.
Bittersweet.
Like, yeah, exactly. And now I'm like, oh, I'd do anything to go back to have a 28-day cycle when I was 28. But anyway, yeah, women are not broken. They don't need fixing. We have this beautiful innate intelligence and rhythm. And if they could just today start to focus on sleep, you would see change for the better in that rhythm. And everything else is education and learning and starting to really understand that rhythm on top. But if you can just start there, then you're doing yourself a great service.
And connection, community, and we're in this together. And I think you've got a promo code, NatFounder, for everybody. So
I only launched the app in October, so at the start of this month. So I'm looking for my first 200 OG members into the app. This is the cheapest way I will ever be offering the app. So for 200 women, I'm allowing those women to come in using NatFounder as the promo code. And it gives you a yearly subscription for £108. Wow. It's £9 a month. And you get to have access to me, everything in the app. It's the cheapest way in because otherwise it's $27 a month. So at £9 a month, it's a bit of a steal. It's the cheapest I'll ever be offering it. So NatFounder, it gives you a whole year, £108, and that's to the first 200 women.
Amazing. Just for the recipes, the connection, access to you and the community, and for real-time practitioner therapeutic information. I'm there. Well, I'm about to sign up. So thank you so much for everything, Kim, your legacy, your passion. And people can find you obviously through the app and then your socials, which we'll list below as well. And are you still practicing? Can people still book you in for consultations?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think I'll ever stop working one-on-one. My patients either seem to range from the perimenopause women or the young girls, 17. I've got one girl who's got PMDD at the moment. She's 21. And so I really love working with women at that stage as well. And I had PCOS all through my 20s, and a lot of my practice is helping women with their PCOS as well. Because I'm in my 40s, I think I'm speaking to a lot of the women in their perimenopause. My day is spent talking about hot flushes and weight gain. I don't think I'll ever give up the one-on-one consultations because it's my natural habitat. I love it so much. And I get to mix up bespoke herbal formulas. And honestly, when I sit here with my herbs, it's like I feel like the most authentic version of myself. Like this is what I'm meant to do. So I love it when I can really start to blend herbs with the person and start to see treatment outcomes and protocols. That's my happy place. So
it can really move the needle. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thanks so much.